I love that. Okay. Welcome to class number 4. Today's topic is America as Promised Land from Winthrop through Joseph Smith. Olivia, what have I missed? You may be wondering. Well, the class is on Catholicism and America, the interconnection of that. I am an American historian by training, so it is a history class, but this being a Catholic center, it's like both, like having your cake and eating it too. Kind of Catholic highlights of American stuff kind of connected. We've so far in the first 3 lectures talked about just general thoughts on Catholicism in America. Lecture 2 was a lot about Junipero Serra and the Spanish missions. Last class, we talked about Lewis and Clark, the Revolution to the War of 1812. Today, a more thematic lecture, okay? So we're not so cleaving strongly to the timeline, just idea of the Promised Land from Winthrop in 1636 through the famous Joseph Smith and our Mormon friends who are right down the street. I told you all, I gave a talk over at the Mormon Center in 2020. I was invited. They paid me $1 million to do it. It's amazing. I was like, how can I say no? You know, they're like, we've been fans of you forever.
They invited me back.
They want me there all the time, but I'm like, no, it's like, I'm like, I don't do stuff for free. It's like $1 million. Like, can you come back and just? I'm like, no. So I haven't gone back. It was wonderful though, for what it was worth. You know, it was great while it lasted. All right. So here we go, guys. All right. This is all. I can actually see this and read it. Olivia, can you see it in that vantage point? Great. Barb, are you okay too?
Yeah.
It's like an army, the wings of our attack. As long as you guys are good, it's okay, fine. So this is the entire lecture. What I said to you, I'm so glad you're here because I'm sure you're awesome. So it's great you're here for that reason. But it's nice to having a new person come in to review what we've covered. Every class, we do something specifically Catholic. What I mean by that is we pull something out, highlight something like a really strong Catholic point within a class that already is doing that in general sense. Last class, we talked about the Carroll family. These are 2 brothers and a cousin, founding of Georgetown University, first Archbishop of Baltimore, Johns Hopkins, a lot of things like that. Our focus today will be, okay, so star of this class, the Father Bill book. Anyone know Father Bill Taylor? Okay, anyone want to tell us stories about him? What's like any like legends about Father Bill Taylor married me and my wife in Nampa, Idaho in 2010, then he forgot the vows though. And so my wife was like, wait a second, aren't we supposed to do the vows? And he's like, oh yeah, my bad. And then we did it. We made sure, you know, we made sure that it was all good. But that's my Father Bill story. Like nicest priest. He was the pastor here. Is this a joke, Maria? Is this funny to you? This is like Wyoming humor. I don't get it. You're number 5. Well, how about a second? Okay.
Oh,
Father Bill, Father Chase. I came here in 2019. Father Chase has been here since when? 15, I think. Is that correct? 15 or 16. I think Father Bill was here in the aughts, right? 2005, 6, 7, those years, right? Wonderful priest. He also is that famous cliche gentleman and a scholar. In addition to being a priest, he's a very serious scholar
and an artist.
An artist, yeah, very talented man. I mean, again, putting aside all the jokes, forgive me in advance. That 62% of this class is nonsense. So I'll try to like maybe you'll pick up the pace of like what's serious. It's just I'm being serious now. He is a great artist. Yeah, he's a very talented man. We always lament in our modern day the lack of Renaissance men and women, people with multiple talents. He very much embodies this, and just a wonderful man. Why is he the star of today's lecture? Because of course Joseph Smith, the Mormons, Father Bill was born in a Mormon family. I recommend you get his book off Amazon. I'll have a picture of it in our lecture. It's called A Tale of Two Cities. It's better than the Dickens Tale of Two Cities, okay? And he talks about basically comparing Salt Lake City to Vatican and talking about these 2 faiths, the LDS and Catholics, comparing and contrasting. I have the notes, all right? I have the proof. I read the book, and I'm going to be talking to you about that. I think it's very apropos because it's like some people say, and I might agree with this, Mormonism is the ultimate American religion. Like it is the most, it's like about the frontier, it's about positivism, like believe it, you can do it. It's about red, white, and blue patriotism. I mean, to this day, Utahns are so patriotic. Okay, well, if Catholics we've already established in our first couple lectures are not strangers in this land. California is both Hispanophone and very, very Catholic. We have a Catholic presence in France, Spain throughout. What about converts like Father Bill? That's kind of where we'll end. Number 1, all right. We will be discussing the triple melting pot in the US. Anyone remember what that is? What is the triple melting pot? I wore, by the way, Betsy's William F. Buckley socks and she's not in class today. So
Oh, man.
that tells you what she thinks about me. Show them on the screen. There, look at that. Some guy, I taught a class somewhere at WSU. He's like, I thought that was a tattoo on your leg. Yeah, you did, really. I was like, maybe, okay, yeah, maybe it's a guy's face on my leg. Maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll get a tattoo like this.
So triple melting pot, or is that the Spanish, the French?
It's a great guess, but no. Triple melting pot is that actually that's brilliant because you may arrive, well, I'm Mexican, I'm Irish, whatever, but after a couple of generations, you in America, if you're an American, you're going to identify in triple melting pot. You're going to be blank, blank, or blank. What is triple melting pot? Identity in America dominantly is this. What is it? It's a great concept to know.
The religion, yeah.
Protestant, Catholic, or Jew. In America, the dominant cultures and cultural identities are Protestantism, Judaism, Catholicism. And people fit, and even the nuns, N-O-N-E-S, are often lapsed Catholics. I was raised Baptist, blah, blah, blah. That religious identity, Protestantism, Catholicism, Judaism, often trumps anything else. After a while, like it doesn't matter where your parents, grandparents came from. You don't even speak those languages, maybe sadly. We started do you speak any languages?
A little kind of Spanish.
Last class we started with a minute of Spanish.
Okay.
And I opened with Spanish and I was like, I hope people watching this online, it's always posted to our Catholic stuff, will be like, no, like I'm not class in Spanish. And then you don't know what they miss. So we'll do Spanish sporadically in this class. A lot of people, right, like do not speak those languages anymore or whatever, but they identify with their religion or even against their religion, sadly. How often have you heard like, well, I'm a recovering Catholic? You guys get it? Because Catholicism is bad. I'm recovering. Got it? And like no one's laughing. No one's laughing, like you're crying. But yeah, people, so even like often you form identity against things. Okay, right? All right. 1636, John Winthrop. Oh yeah, we're gonna read it word by word into other connectors. We're gonna connect it out. We're gonna mention the word Obama in this class. We're gonna mention the word Trump. That offends people. I don't care. The Puritans, CB2. Puritans. John Winthrop is a Puritan. Okay. Great Awakenings. The first Great Awakening is 1730 to 1740. All right. By the way, I realize right now, Aston, I'm so sorry. I can change the slide here. I haven't changed it for you. Here's the slide I'm looking at. My bad. In the chat, what was the name of Father Joe's book? Tale of Two Cities. Tale of Two. And the subtitle is like Catholics and Mormons. Catholics and Mormons. I think, yeah, okay. Here we go. That's what I'm looking at right there.
There it is.
There you go. There we go, right? That's good. Okay, it's fixed. First Great Awakening is 1730s and 40s. All right. Second Great Awakening is 1805. Both, as you can tell by my reaction, absolutely hilarious topics. Your constant question in this class. Yeah, where do Catholics fit in? I'll give you a spoiler really fast. The 1730 Great Awakening is very puritanical, very much Winthrop and his ilk. Jonathan Edwards, maybe you've heard the famous Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, that sermon. Very fire and brimstone. Everyone's heard that term. The Second Great Awakening is all our Baptist friends in the South. Okay, just eating pecan pie all day long and not worried. Very kind of like, I have done the altar call. I love Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Very more positive, kind of like a lot of our friends that are non-denominational Christians, Second Great Awakening. Like I'm a Bible-believing Christian who accepted Christ, my Lord and Savior. And praise God truly for all that. The Calvinistic First Awakening is different, but they both shift, they both include American religiosity. How do we Catholics fit in? Number 5, all the interactions in the New World. Quote, if we use this term, use it like I say to, or don't, do what you want. Yes, you have free will, use it wisely. By the way, if you want to give me a coffee, extra whipped milk foam, double poured, slowly, plus mad honey. Mad like copious amounts. Okay. So if anyone wants to take me up on that request, then feel free to. But I already have a coffee, so maybe it's a moot point. The New World, yeah, traditionally, right? It's false. It's not like, well, people arrive and it's just virgin territory. There's no one there, and the Europeans do what they want. That's false, because the First Nation peoples, all Native Americans are there. So that's not correct to say it's just totally new world. If you're Native American, it's not a new world for you. It's a very old world for you. However, if you want to use the New World meaning like Our Lady of Guadalupe, Mestizo, the combination of Mesoamerican Aztec heritage with the Spanish conquistadors, that is very much a new world. if I'm a 10th generation Mexican, I very much am both Mesoamerican, Native American, and Spanish. And those two identities are not in contradiction with one another, right? So you can use the New World in that way, but I would say, whatever. Make that distinction. Finally, the Mormons, with the start of the class C again, this Catholic convert from the LDS, which if anyone does not know what LDS means, I think everyone does. But for the hundreds of thousands of viewers we have later on, they watch this on YouTube. If any of you online later don't know what LDS means, it means Latter-day Saints, right? The Mormons often, actually, not even interchangeable. I think the Mormons don't like being called Mormon. They want to be called LDS. Okay, whatever. Father Bill Taylor, former Augie's pastor, convert to Catholicism. All right. All right, but before we begin, all right, important questions, points before we begin, before we turn to the previous slide, and then quote, get it, like quote, go for it. All right. So this is my first question for you. All right. I just want to know, how dare you? Before we start, how dare you? Also, how could you? Also, why? Okay. And I mean, really, okay, Barb, what was the point of it? Okay. Now I have some wisdom, Dave. We dispense to you before we get started. You have heard people say, you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. I say, pretend you can't read. Because then you'll be like, look, I wasn't criticized. I don't even know how the letters are arranged. I'm illiterate, okay? So you being offended by me saying that, I don't know what that means. I can't read words. Also, fly fishing is probably the most boring activity on the face of the earth. It's worse than golf. It really is, right? Like, I mean, come on, golf, it's really bad. Fly fishing is probably worse. Here's some good advice that I want all of you to take to heart. Okay, don't think, vote. Don't think about like who you're going to vote. Just do it. Okay, this is about democracy. President Biden is giving a speech tomorrow, and I'd like to send him this slide. Don't think, just vote. It's on his teleprompter. He'll say it. That's why I love Biden. He'll say whatever you put on his teleprompter. All right, and finally, I think it's the last piece of advice. If you don't like to run or lift weights and you find walking not intense enough, try crawling uphill. Pay attention to good form as a workout. If you're going to crawl uphill as a workout, you better be paying attention to form. It's like deadlifting. You can't do it haphazardly, all right? You got to be really good form as you crawl. It's a great workout. All right, now, pictures of models. Okay, it's really important. We're almost at, Dave, we're almost at the stuff you came for. This is what I'm interested in. Okay, you're looking at me like, when are we going to get to what I promised? Hold your horses. First, pictures of models. Okay, this guy.
You're still with the pack alone.
This guy is a Russian. This guy is a Russian model. I forget his name. But I mean, like, if he majored in being model in school, like he passed. He's first in his class. And then, like, this is Claudia Schiffer, right? Also, I mean, she's like PhD in modeling, right? This is not even Claudia Schiffer in her prime. It's like older Claudia Schiffer. This guy was worried about me putting his photo up. He's self-conscious, I want you to know, but he's really big on his planet, okay? This guy's a really important model. He doesn't have a name, okay? His face is so famous. And finally, maybe the best model, it's the drawn model that's like architectural model, which is like, will symbolize this class is all about. It's like whatever you want to make it, right? Like at this point, like, I mean, I don't even know, but you can go any direction you want. All right. So back to our slides and back to the stuff Dave wants. I want to talk about that, but Dave wants, okay.
Thanks for that.
So triple melting pot in the US, where does Catholic identity fit in? Have the AI. That does not mean I want you to have the artificial intelligence. Because I'm terrible at grammar, I might say I have the AI, and it's an actual list of bullet points, which I'm going to show you right now. Okay, so triple melting pot. That book does not cost $1.45 anymore. It's false advertising. Will Herberg, who is Jewish himself, famous historian, wrote a book in 1955 called Protestant, Catholic, and Jew. The failing New York Times said the most fascinating essay on the religious sociology of America that has appeared, right? And it has, see it as like, it's really interesting because it has 3 pyramids, 3 triangle shapes at the bottom. You want you to ask which one is which. I guess it's for you to decide. I don't know, but I have the A through I. Actually, I have the A through J, right? If you're like, where does Jewish, Catholic, and Protestant identity fit into America? Like, you can leave the class after this. If you're like, I saw the pictures of the models and I got the melting pot, that's good enough for me. What I always tell people is like, try to get one thing out of the class. Try to get one thing that's important that you remember. This is great. This is a great rundown because I said earlier in this class, we're going full thematic today. We're not really talking about dates, one thing after the other, kind of themes and kind of ideas. And well, let's talk about taking the hints that we earlier discussed of Hispanophone, Juniperaceras, Spanish Catholics in the Southwest, French Catholics up in Canada, Catholicism spread out through the country. How about Catholicism over the time until now even, right? Let's hop into a time machine. Forget that this lecture is 1636 to Joseph Smith, 1820s, and go all the way to COVID and now. Number 1, WASP ruling class from the founding. Both British colonies in Puritan first Great Awakening New England and very secular, fallen away, maybe sometimes practicing Anglican Tidewater era. First Great Awakening New England, Second Great Awakening Chesapeake. The WASP ruling class is like, if you're going to talk about America as a quote Christian country, it's WASPs often. What does that acronym mean? No, it's the bad version of a bee. Dan, it's a wasp. It's not. It's not. I don't know what that is. You guys all answered. I never heard of that. No, it's like this ruling class will sting you. They're bad. They'll bite you. What do wasps do? Right? They're not your friend. Peter knows what I'm talking about. Peter wrote like 9 books about this topic. Yeah, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, right? Protestants largely, umbrellaized. Presbyterians, Episcopalians, whatever it may be. Mass arrival of Catholics begin in the 1850s. When I say it's congenital to the South, I mean the Catholics, they never come to the South, but they're there when the country's founded, right? The St. Augustine, Florida is 1535. Santa Fe is 1610, found foundational dates. Coronado, DeSoto, exploring the Arkansas Valley, the Ozark area, Ryan Alexander's absolute like Tolkien level kingdom. They're Catholicizing all this area. Have you ever been to Subiaco Monastery before?
I've not been to Subiaco.
How dare you?
Been to Clear Creek a lot.
I don't know what is Clear Creek? Is that Oklahoma?
Yeah, it's not.
Oh, okay.
It's
I watched the Subiaco Monastery in Arkansas in surprise, Subiaco, Arkansas. Yeah. This monk there, this Benedictine monk was just like, he was epic. And I was wondering if you're ever there. I'm disappointed you haven't been there. Maybe
I looked at their website.
It's not good enough. I asked if you were there. I don't know if you walked on the website.
We actually had, we were in the Arkansas River Valley in July, and we did go to an area which was settled by German immigrants in the early 1900s, German Catholics, and they actually built a huge, enormous, beautiful church. Really, 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 really beautiful. I think about 1914. Yeah, it was very cool. I mean, it had stations across. They were all subtitled in German.
That's really cool. That's beautiful.
One of the interesting features was a swastika on a Roman silver shield.
Wow.
And again, 1915, 16 when that came up.
Sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And like these hidden gems that you discover out of the way or somehow, it's like have all this living history of themselves.
And after we go to lunch at a Swiss heritage vineyard.
It seems like it was a pretty great day.
It's pretty hot.
What kind of Arkansas was it?
This is about 45 minutes east of Fort Smith, Arkansas River Valley.
Okay.
Olivia, what is your connection to Arkansas?
I worked there. I was in Little Rock for a couple months. So I'm a travel nurse. So.
Oh, cool. Nice. Wow. Awesome.
Fort Smith on the western border.
Yes, it's right up. It's on the Arkansas.
Yeah. It's amazing how huge America is, and yet how people are from all places. Like that's such a cliche, dumb thing to say, but it's true. People are just like, oh yeah, I've been there, it's cool. Great. In that area, in Little Rock, and Fort Smith, everywhere. I mean, I don't know why no one mentioned Fayetteville yet, and freaking Pig Suey. I mean, like it's all that matters in Arkansas. is yelling at hogs on sport field.
Certainly true.
All that matters, guys. What is life worth living if you can't yell "Whooping Suey" at the football stadium? I don't think so. In all that area, it's a lot of Catholicism. It's congenital to the South. It's born there. But the mass immigration of Catholics in the 1850s, I'm basically talking about the urban North, talking about the post-Irish potato famine entering into Boston, into New York, that area. The arrival of the Jews, now we have our three groups, is really an 1880s Pale the Settlement. What is Pale the Settlement? Well, after Poland is partitioned, the far, far, far western part of Russia is Pale the Settlement. Surprise, surprise. It's very much in the news today, like modern day Ukraine, that area. And a lot of Jewish people, especially in response to different pogroms and the fighting with the Tsar and all this kind of stuff. Tsar Nicholas II is the final Tsar of Russia. His predecessors are, his father is Alexander III, his grandfather is Alexander II. So Alexander II, Alexander III, these czars. A lot of like Jews feeling like we don't have rights, we're second-class citizens, emigrate to New York. New York becomes insanely Jewish in terms of a Jewish character. But I can say that like New Orleans is an insanely Catholic city to this day still. Even if you're like, oh yeah, New Orleans is so debauched and stuff, it's still very, very Catholic. There's a church on every street corner. New York is very, very Jewish. There's very Protestant areas of America. Like this is the triple melting pot. This gentleman, this brilliant historian, Will Herberg, talked about it. Also, Ellis Island, 1924 Nativist Act, which is rescinded by the 1965 Immigration Act that allows more third world immigration. America is becoming kind of a melting pot, as we often grew up hearing about it colloquially, of different diverse groups. But this guy argues, and again, obviously I like his argument, that after a while that ceases to matter. It doesn't matter if you're from Nigeria or Poland or Iceland. If you're American, after three generations, you're going to be Protestant, Catholic, or Jew. You're going to be one of those groups. Catholic Production Code, D. Anyone know what that means? Who's heard of that? What is the Catholic Production Code?
Is this the Hays Code era of motion pictures?
Yeah, so what was the deal?
That was censorship. Okay, so after
Is that good or bad?
After the debaucherous movie making of the 20s and 30s, I believe predominantly Catholics lobbied for Hollywood to have a Hays Code, where they said basically, look, you can't have this degenerate crap on screen. You actually have to make movies which are in line with the American population. And we're going to stop going to that if you don't do that. And so they actually succeeded in which is why you don't see a lot of as much, I guess, promiscuity in those 1930s to 1960s era, like lots of sexual event, like just gross stuff during that era as you might during other eras. Yeah. Censorship in movies. We don't like censorship as Americans. I can see even your face is awesome. Your expression is like, well, we're against censorship as an American, right? That offends us as Americans. But the Catholics are like, look, these movies are immoral for whatever reason. Hollywood makes a lot of movies basically under Catholic permission, which is not the case now, in case anyone needed me to say that. That era has ended. FYI, if you're not sure. Well, like, have you watched the Shia LaBeouf interview? Yeah, I've heard something.
Let's talk. We can talk about Shia LaBeouf as long as you guys want. Anyone know what we're talking about? Who does Shia LaBeouf? Anyone know who knows? Who does not know who Shia LaBeouf is?
Oh, okay.
Even Stevens, exactly. I grew up watching Even Stevens. Yeah. Shia LaBeouf. And no one knows what I'm talking about. Shia LaBeouf. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what's the?
I mean, I saw it with his interview with Christian Barron.
Oh, good. Yeah. So Shia LaBeouf is like super left wing, typical Hollywood guy. He converted to like hardcore Catholicism, like he's all about the Latin Mass and everything. And the inspiration was he's playing the titular role of Padre Pio. He's playing a movie about Padre Pio as Padre Pio. And he was catechized by some epic nun in the monastery. It's like he was done before he was started. Like he was inevitable, he was Catholic. But he did just a great interview with Bishop Barron. And yeah, I watched like 45 minutes of it, I think. I haven't finished it yet, but got the gist off quote unquote Catholic Twitter, which is a cesspool like normal Twitter, but right? Am I wrong? I mean, am I wrong? No, right? And nothing I say is ever wrong, but especially in this one. Okay, this is the same time. Fulton J. Sheen, he accepts the Academy Award. Life is worth living. He said, "I like to drink." I'm serious.
Fulton Sheen got an Academy Award.
I kid you not.
I'll be done.
See, it's hilarious. Like I know, I am the boy who cried wolf. I make so many jokes in this class. That sounds like that's a funny joke. Fulton Sheen won the Academy Award or won an Emmy Award or some kind of major television award. He had a primetime show called Life is Worth Living. You can still watch on YouTube. And he says, hilariously, he's like, I like to thank my writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Everyone, the culture was so Christian, both Catholic and Protestant, everyone got the joke. Because they're like, who is that? Like, are those his boys? Like, what does he mean? Everyone, understood, and like, it was amazing that they allowed, like, no one's making a show. You like, let's say that you love Cardinal Dolan, the Archbishop of New York. No one's like, yeah, let's put Cardinal Dolan on 8 p.m. 7 Central on ABC to give us an hour-long, like, right? Our culture has gone away from that, sadly. This is the 60s are the height of Catholicism in America, especially our boy, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Becoming, wait for it, he did it, president, right? He did it. He went all the way to the top, and he was like, no apologies. He released so many diss tracks when he became president in rap songs, ripping his opponents. He's amazing. He's the best Catholic rapper of all time. He invented rap. He invented rap. Yeah, he just freestyle too. He's so off the cuff. It's amazing. Olivia, you would love JFK freestyle at Woodstock, 1969. It's amazing.
Yeah, by the way, since you brought Fulton Sheen, I couldn't help but look that up. He got an Emmy in 1953, and the category was Most Outstanding Personality.
Yeah, so
I
like,
didn't know that was the category.
got it. 1953, he won an Emmy for being most Catholic guy on TV. Yeah, that was the category.
You remember he was beat out by.
Yeah, exactly. Then JFK, yeah. JFK becoming president is huge, right? And it's always kind of like fears of, papal take over America. All this thing is like, haha, lol. But really, Protestants not like this. Protestants out self-contraceptive. Yeah, Protestants are like Xing themselves by their massive promotion of contraception. The Rockefeller family especially loved contraception, loved promoting that. Sadly, this got into the Catholic stream as well. So the visceral reaction against Humanae Vitae in 1968. Zionism, we last talked about Judaism with the arrival of Jews from the Pale Settlement. Zionism becomes a huge, important role in American politics today. Nancy Pelosi, I think, said recently, if Congress would be destroyed, we'd still support Israel. She's a Democrat. Republicans love supporting Israel, like Tom Cotton, Ted Cruz, right? It seems like both left and right in America really want to support Israel. They're our greatest ally in the region. That so goes. And I'm not going to tell you how to think about this. Like, you should support Israel or support Iran or whatever. I'm not interested in giving my personal opinion. But like the rise of Zionism, which begins in the 1890s. If you don't know what Zionism is, it's simply the Jewish people were sadly driven out of their homeland, out of the land of milk and honey, the promised land, right? With the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. And you have the Jewish diaspora spread over the world. And that's why there's Jews everywhere in the world, like there's Catholics everywhere in the world, right? It's a universal kind of thing. This guy, Theodor Herzl, in the late 1800s, an Austrian guy, was like, Jews should have a homeland. They get a homeland first, the Balfour Declaration, 1917, following the First World War. It really picks up at the end of the 6 Days War and the kind of different Israel fighting Egypt and all the different, Iran is not yet a huge enemy because they haven't had the revolution until 1979. But the importance of Zionism, like I think to this day, I think we give Israel like $10 million a day in funding, I think, for their Iron Dome, the anti-missile system against the Palestinians. I might say how to feel about that. Like, that's great or not. And you can be very philo-Semitic. We know what anti-Semitism is. It's the opposite. You can be very pro-Jewish people and say, but I don't want to support Israel. Or you can be very pro-Jewish people and say, I love Israel. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how to feel about Israel. It's just that Israeli lobby is a huge reality in American political life, both on the left and the right. 60s and 70s, culture wars, films, production codes gone, abortion, post-civil rights era, so what? So what now? Like, who cares? I'm saying, so what? I mean, this is kind of our era already now. Especially H, John Paul II, EWTN. John Paul II and Mother Angelica are both huge American figures, even though only one of them is American. And Mother Angelica is like not even American. She's like really Italian, right? I mean, she's like, if you're female and you're Italian, you're not American. You're Italian. Too much to her. Mother Angelica talked about a bishop once. I don't know, anyone know this story? This is a true story. 1993. World Youth Day, Denver. What happened? What's the controversy? Sure, Trish. Pretend like you don't know. You arranged this. You were the what happened?
What, wasn't there a woman who played Jesus?
Exactly. A woman plays Jesus in the Station of the Cross. Mother Angelica goes epic rant. And she's like, she says about some bishop who did it. I'm dead serious. She's like, as far as I am concerned, I just want to know he can put his head in a toilet and flush repeatedly. That is an American lady wouldn't say that, but an Italian woman would. So John Paul is Polish, Mother Angelica is like 80% Italian. They have huge, I'm kidding, of course. She's an American, by the way. So everyone knows Mother Angelica is 100% American.
Well, her name is Rita Rizzo.
Yeah, she's very ethnically Italian, but she's an American girl from I think New York or something, like born in 1920s, I think. Very much of this people coming over, Ellis Island, her family, from Italy, but she's 100% American. The force of EWTN, John Paul II. I mean, really, I really don't like JP2. So it's so obnoxious. Just say John Paul II. Like it's like, ugh, I don't know. That drives me nuts. I'm sorry. Did you see JP2 at WYD? What are you saying? Like, what are you talking about?
And yet you have no issue with JFK.
Because he's a rapper, chief. Like as a rapper, I support my own. That's why. He wasn't actually a rapper. Okay. So I'm not gonna lie, like you've been in this class like 10 minutes, you already seem like you've been here the whole time and like you're a brilliant person. So I don't have to explain it to you, but just think he was worried, like he wasn't actually a rapper, sadly, unfortunately. What about 9/11 under COVID-19? And what about now? President Biden, right? Best president in American history. When he gives his talk, I think it's tomorrow night. I think Biden can talk tomorrow about democracy. I think he's probably going to say over and over again, defend democracy, and put in must. And we must defend democracy. Democracy must be defended. Something like that. That's the narrative always on Ukraine, right? We have to defend democracy, and that's why we're supporting the Ukrainians. So how do we fit in as Catholics? How do we feel when Pope Francis makes kind of positive statements towards the Russians? Like, tragedy on both sides. He said something like that, and your Ukrainian minister got offended. Okay, where do Catholics fit in this A through J thing? We can end the class now. This is great. This is a lot of information for one. It's like 8 really good, but we're going to continue on, okay? All right. Now, I showed you this book, right? Protestant Catholic Jew, and you're like, I don't know if it's a real book, right? Because one might be made up, but a group signals genus and species and collectivity. So if I show you evidence of other books, you'll believe it's a real book. It is a real book. All right. So let's see. I have here Walker Percy, Love in the Ruins. Alaska as it used to was. This is a real title. This guy's the man. I almost bought this book, and I was like, it's probably so bad it's not worth it for the really funny title, but this book is my favorite book of all time. Okay, anybody can be cool, but awesome takes practice. All right, awesome takes a lot of practice. Then this John Gottberg, William H. Mullins, Idaho Travel Guide. I have read this book like in Hot Springs so many times. I can't even tell you. The best thing to do with this is to read this book on the section on Smith's Ferry, Idaho 55 north out of Horseshoe Bend. And when he's talking about like Banks area, Council area, and he's describing Hot Springs, and you're like, you know what? Like I'm living that right now. I'm living the words I'm reading. It's unbelievable. It's a transcendent experience. Here's other books as well. Okay. Well, Fred.
Why do we need to read both?
Well,
French translation.
I know it's not fair that I have Dostoevsky in English and the French. No one speaks French in this class, really. I always ask this question. That is so pathetic and so bad. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, can you anyone find Waldo? Where is Waldo? Anyone know? No? Okay. Well, too bad. Okay, this is John Winthrop. So this is our second point, right? John Winthrop gives a speech, a lecture or treatise, a model. I don't know why there's a red line on the board too. I have no idea why there's a red line on my Zoom. I have no idea. Dave, can you see that?
I don't see that.
Doesn't pop
Oh,
up?
yeah, on the shoulder there.
Yeah, I don't know why it's there, but
Interesting, yeah.
okay, so March 21st, 1630. He's quoting from our Lord's Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. A city on a hill cannot be hid, Jesus Christ says. All right. And he says, what? Why is this so famous and so American? Like, I want to put my paper down and just be like, let's just get to it now. Let's pull the Band-Aid off. Just tell me now. Like, this is a religious sermon by a puritanical Calvinist Protestant preacher. Yes, he's talking religiously because he's quoting the Bible after all. But how do Americans take this and run with it?
Well, does he assert that we are?
Evangelizing?
What are we evangelizing?
Well, if they're listening to him, they're evangelizing. What happened?
Well, you're like, yeah, you're half right.
Does he assert that we are like God's chosen? We are.
The Puritans are very, very, this is very appropriate for our lecture today of Protestant, Catholic, Jew, very Jewish in their theology. Not only do they, and thank God, the Old Testament is the inspired word of God, but I would almost say like the Jews would be fine being like, let's just keep all the Jewish commandments. Like, we believe Christ is the Messiah, but let's keep the dietary laws. They're very, very Old Testament oriented. Like Moses leaving Egypt, right? That Charlton Heston movie is so good. Anyone agree with me? 10 Commandments, Charlton Heston, 1955. You didn't see that? It's unbelievable.
Some of us saw it when it came out.
Yeah, me too. I was there. I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
That Moses going across the Red Sea and leading the people out of bondage in Egypt to the Promised Land. That's how John Winthrop looks at Puritans coming to America, escaping not just Catholic Europe. The Catholics aren't even the bad guys. Winthrop's eyes. The Anglicans are. Elizabeth and everyone following Henry VIII. This is a promised land, and it's religious, he's saying, but he's actually inventing American secular religion. That is the number one thing maybe that's the most important thing we're learning today. We're learning a lot of good stuff today, which is cool. It's a nice, compact lecture. Even secular people will use this. I challenge you, watch Biden's speech tomorrow and see if he says like city on the hill. I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but every president since maybe even Washington has used it sometime in his term, has talked about America as a city on the hill. We often have secularized it to mean a city on the hill for democratic values, for women's right to vote, for social equality, diversity. Like, we've taken the religion out of it, but still the same thrust. May the Lord make it like that of New England. We must consider we shall be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us. So that if we shall deal falsely with our God in this work we have undertaken, and so cause him to withdraw his present help from us, we shall be made a story and byword through the world. And he goes on and simply say, he's talking very much biblically, but he's saying that Massachusetts Bay Colony, for him, there's no separation of church and state. The puritanical way is the right way to do it. He's saying that will make this colony, this new promised land, this new Jerusalem, everyone will follow our example. If you are pro-American interventionism, if you like America spreading democracy in the world, you're John Winthrop. That's the connection. Every president has talked about this. Why are we helping Ukraine now? Because city on a hill. We have to be an example to the world. Why do we go into Iraq? To be city on a hill, spread democracy. Why do we go into Vietnam and Korea? Why do we get involved in in Venezuela and Grenada and Latin America? It's always the same thing. Because the world is better when American values are widely promoted. A lot of you have heard this term neocon, neoconservative. That's that philosophy. It goes all the way back to 1636.
But wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Some of those examples I would agree with, in the sense of like Korea and the spread of communism, that sort of thing, spreading our ideology. But some of the other examples, such as the Mideast, I think there's an argument that was just for research.
Sure, but
It's
we have
not that we really are trying to spread democracy, only insofar as it protects more resources.
Yeah, but we can't admit that though.
But we need a half-hearted effort, at the very least, trying to establish liberal democracies in Iraq and Afghanistan. As well as, I don't know, yeah, you can make the argument that's about resources, but then why do we spend so much time and money saying, hey, we have to have you know, the Iraqis have got a vote. I mean, I remember in 2004, 2005, how excited the news reports were. It's like, oh, the Iraqis are going to get the vote. They're going to choose their own leader now. But that was a big deal.
I think my favorite interview. Thank you for using that. It's gonna be way off topic, but you use the words big deal. Jorge Ramos is a reporter, Spanish reporter. He does an interview with Jose Ballarat Diaz. And Jorge Ramos is like, when you arrived as anchor at an English speaking language, he's like, that's a big deal. And he's like, he just goes straight from the Spanish, but pero, that's a big deal. Pero, that is a big deal. It's amazing. Both of them speak, Ballarat Diaz especially speaks incredible English. He's an American. Jorge Ramos with an accent, but also great. But it's just, he's like, that's a big deal. And I was like, that is such a great tip of the hat. So maybe the same thing here too. Maybe you're Jorge Ramos. We can't admit it if we're going there for resources. Can't say that. Can't come out and say we're coming here to pilfer your gold, your oil, your lumber. You have to look at all the presidents, including this guy. Look what Kennedy says, right? I have spoken of the shining city all my political life. And he goes on to say how God has blessed America, spread America. Obama in 2006, University of Massachusetts. As a traveling nurse, have you ever been to Boston? Okay, that's unfortunate. Because then I'd be like, you might have been here at the speech. Now I know 100% you weren't there. Obama says, I see students that have come here from over 100 different countries, believing like those first settlers, they too could find a home in this city on a hill. Mitt Romney couldn't make up his mind if he was going to use city on a hill. He kept flip-flopping back and forth, finally decided he was going to do it. He says his domestic policies will lead to recession. His foreign policies make America and the world less safe, meaning Obama. He has neither the temperament nor the judgment to be president, and his personal qualities would mean that America would cease to be a shining city on the hill. They're always using this term. Always. They love it. During the 2016 presidential race, Senator Ted Cruz used the phrase during his speech announcing the suspension of his campaign. Obama quotes Reagan at the same time and proposing a contrasted version to that of then presidential candidate, Donald Trump. James Comey, FBI director, in testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee on Russian interference 2016 election said, talking about a foreign government that tried to shape the way we think, we vote, we act. They're going to try to run it down and dirty up as much as possible. This is America. This isn't Arkansas. This is what this is about. And then we'll be back. Because we remain as difficult as we can view with each other. We remain that shining city on a hill. There you go. And they don't like it, he says. Comey says they don't like it. Russians don't like it. We're a shining city on a hill. And then Mike Pompeo also says it, but who cares? Okay, so kind of, this is a really, really kind of big thing that people are talking about over and time and again. Now, I had in the earlier slides, in the non-nonsense portion, the non-model portion, the next thing was talking about the Great Awakenings. Let me just once more remind you, right? There are two Great Awakenings in America, 1730s and 40s in New England, wherein you have the growth of this puritanical fire and brimstone, post-Winthrop, Jonathan Edwards, the most famous Protestant minister of that time, arguably, spreading Presbyterian Calvinistic thoughts in the North. The Great Awakening, though, in the South, Second Great Awakening, 1805 era, turn of the 19th century, creates the Bible Belt. If you ever you were in Little Rock, in Arkansas, I went to school in Mississippi. Why is that place so Bible Belt? Because of the Second Great Awakening. Scholars have said, quote, Baptists and Methodists conquered the South during the Second Great Awakening. That's why they're there. Catholics are always omnipresent, congenital, remember. Okay. Who are these gentlemen?
Joseph Smith and Brigham Young.
Yeah, Brigham Young. How many wives did Brigham Young have?
23.
How much?
23.
That's not even trying. Anyone can have 23 wives. How many wives do you have?
How many wives do you have?
Not as many as Brigham Young. Yeah, I want to make a joke. Like, say Brigham Young had 55 wives. I want to be like, he had 55 wives. That's like 40 more than I only have one wife, for the record. He had 55 wives. Brigham Young is really the guy who brings the Mormons out west. Joseph Smith is the gentleman who claims in 1823 in New York that The angel Moroni has revealed these hidden tablets in the hillside of a reformed Egyptian, he calls it, and it's the true church. And that's why he calls it the Church of Latter-day Saints. In these latter days, 1,800 years after the death and resurrection of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, now the true church will be reformed. The Catholics were like, absolutely not. Matthew 16. The gates of hell shall not prevail. We're the true church. Catholics and Mormons, theologically, right? There's the deep levels of incompatibility. On a personal level, I really like, because I like the Mormons personally very, very much. If I do theologically strongly disagree with them, as they with me. I mean, you know, all fair, all's fair. All's fair in theological disagreements.
Did you know who Moroni's father is? This one was Mormon. And
that's the Book of Mormon.
That's where we get them.
I'm not even kidding. I did not know that. Yeah, if you ask me, like, what is the Book of Mormon named after? What figurative? I didn't know that. In their lore, like Mormon is the father. Okay. And he's an angel as well in their theology. You know that? He's an angel as well in their theology, or okay.
Yeah, angel warrior.
Okay. That seems like that's a ripoff of St. Michael. But
they identify St. Michael with Jesus.
That Jesus is St. Michael?
Yes.
Blessed be God forever. Oh, the confusion. Okay. If you're Mormon listening to this, know that I'm a huge supporter of BYU football. That's what I do. So whatever that's worth. We're going to talk about what the greatest thing in Mormon ever in a second. But basically, look, it is a good book. The title's hard to remember, by John Turner, about Brigham Young. The title is Brigham Young. It's a great biography. It's a really great biography. He argued that Brigham Young is the greatest colonizer in American history. Because, I kid you not, this doesn't work. The government, surprise, surprise, doesn't want a polygamous theocracy in the Western United States, even parts of Southern Idaho. I wish, considering how gross like Pocatello area is, I wish that they would have taken Pocatello away from Idaho. So it's too bad that it's part of Idaho. And then maybe they could have absorbed all of Wyoming. Am I right? There'd be no Wyoming today. It'd be good. Brigham Young is actually the guy who moves the Mormons west after Joseph Smith is killed in Kirkland, Missouri in 1844. Brigham Young shows up in Salt Lake City. Sick, dude. So that's what the record says. He wrote, "This is sick, bro." And he B-R-A-H, on his word credit. So he says to the pen, "This is sick, bro." And he's like, "I know, dude." He's like, "This is mad space out here." And he's like, let's get it. And they start building their city. They think this is part of the Mexican Empire. It was at that time. But the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, 1848, oops. The Mormons claim like we're always being persecuted. People just don't understand, you know, our religion. We want religious freedom. Let's leave America. They do. They leave America into what was then part of the Mexican territory, Nuevo Mexico. But with the successful conclusion from our perspective, the Americans, Mexican-American War, we get all that land, so he's back in America. You know, he's got 99 problems, but geographical certainty is not one. It's the better quote, because he's back in America. This is the greatest thing ever right here, okay? This is the Cougarettes dance team from BYU. And they're like, this is why I really support BYU. Let me see. Okay. Like these girls have won like 12 national championships. I'm gonna let you guys watch like this. Let me see. They're the best dance team in America.
If you're in Idaho, 2022 is your last year.
And so it's like if Brigham Young was like, we're gonna have the Cougarettes dance team once, and they're gonna be this good, then like, it was totally worth it. And you become mascot of here.
What is their map?
They're the Cougars like that. Oh, no. They're the Cougars like WSU. Okay. It was worth it. It was worth going to Utah. Yeah. That guy's the man. Okay. I'm not gonna lie. Now, again, I do, like, this is a serious comment. Like, I do take chastity very seriously. We should as Catholics, thank God. It's not a joke. But like, I'm being serious. The Cougarettes actually, this is the good things, like Catholic and Mormon morals have a lot in common, right? The girls in the Cougarette dance team are actual good athletes. They're not just like scantily dressed, whatever. I've been in a lot of different universities where I feel sad because these girls are really good athletes, but they're just out there just like in like bikinis basically. And it's like, oh man, like literally, I don't know if I can say this on a recording, I will. But it was so, no, that was at University of Illinois. And I kid you not, there's this guy sitting there. He's like 60 years old, right? He's got a big gulp Coke. These college girls walk out, the Illini dancers, and they're great athletes. They're not as good as the Cougarettes. Cougarettes really are. They're the best dance team in America. I'm not kidding. I'm not being funny. They're like national championship every year. They're very, very good. They're like incredible ballerina level, classically trained. I can't stress that enough. I'm sure the Illini girls are also very good. Sadly, it was like they were put in that box of like, well, but you have to dance in this kind of, scantily dressed out. Not like the Cougarettes who are all in long sleeves, whatever, outfits. This guy literally there blurts out, no shame. This is right. He's like, oh yeah. Like, exactly. It was so cringe and gross. He was even trying to hide it. I'm like, I feel so bad because like it's like that could be like his daughters. The guy's daughter. Like I'm sitting here like a 45-year-old guy, and that guy, my daughter, is out there. He's like, yeah. It's like, but it's like, why do they do that? Why can't let the young women like not be dressed like that and just be good at dancing? So the BYU, that's where I'm like all on board. It's like excellent. Like morality speaking, the Mormons seem to have really good kind of moral code. Yeah.
A lot of those girls, those cheerleader things are actually in gymnastics.
I know. I kid you not. No, they are. I know. I think I watched once, my wife and I, Kate, were watching a bunch of Cougarette videos. I learned about them from her. She was like a binge watching them once. And we watched like trying out for the Cougarettes. And I think it's like required. I kid you not. The way if you want to get a PhD, you have to have like a master's degree or a bachelor's at least. To even try out for the Cougarettes, you have to have some kind of classical training. You have to have done like ballet for X amount of days. It's very, very competitive. There's nothing like, oh, you have to be X amount beautiful or just whatever, or look a certain way. And it's the non-objectification of their outfits means like, no, we're only grading you on the dancing talent and stuff. And they're very, very good. Yeah. Okay. Father Bill Taylor, Tale of Two Cities, the Mormons, the Catholics. Okay. What does he say in his book? I mean, it's basically the last slide I have for you. Is it? Let me see. Yeah. End of slideshow is next. Okay. This is the last slide. Father Bill Taylor. Now, is he biased? Yeah, he is, right? He grew up in a Mormon family. He converts to Catholicism. Of course, he's biased. I mean, I'll admit, I'm very biased in favor of Catholicism. So you got to take every author with a grain of salt. What does Father Bill say in his book? Now I'll save you the $600 it costs on Amazon to buy it. Salt Lake City, for the Intermountain Mormons, Father Bill says, is a Vatican-type centrality. If you're like, I want to know one thing about the Mormons, because they outlawed polygamy in 1890, but it's no longer a feature of the mainstream Mormon faith. The FLDS have continued that, but that doesn't apply in many ways. In a lot of their temple ceremonies are very kind of shrouded in secrecy. Like if you're like, well, okay, that seems like a lot of older stuff. What about today? That's a good way of like Salt Lake City is looked at for them like it's insane. Like if you live in Pocatello, there's already signs like 90 miles to Salt Lake. It's like, well, that is the Vatican for them. Early Americans, Father Bill says, understand themselves best in kind of Old Testament imagery, Exodus, especially. I mentioned that, right? The Puritans and the idea of like Moses being freed from Pharaoh in Egypt. The Mormons, especially. Father Bill says the Mormons have this impetus of like, go west, that famous Toby Keith song, go west, young man, which is the famous saying that he didn't invent, right? But yeah, like go west, young man, not just for gold. I think Toby Keith's song is what? Go west, young man, haven't you been told? California's full of women, whiskey, and gold. That is not what the Mormons are about. Toby Keith is not a Mormon, FYI. Although you wish he was, I understand. He's not. They go west to find this promised land. Brigham Young, as I mentioned, leads the Mormons to Utah. Mormon theology has three main books: the Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, and Pearl of Great Price. Mormons do not have a triune understanding of God, sadly. This raises the ancient question of like, are Mormons Christian or not? I don't want to offend people. I want to say Mormons are not Christian. But I mean, Mormons do have to be not rebaptized, baptized for the first time, right? I baptize you in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Those of us, thank God, praise God, baptized in Trinitarian formula. If I'm like a Presbyterian or Episcopalian, I come to Catholic, and I'm not rebaptized. That's the Anabaptist heresy, right? The Mormons are not, as the church would say, properly baptized. They don't have the proper understanding of the divinity of Christ, his consubstantiality with the Father, right? Mormons really, some people have said, Father Bill, this is a harsh critique, but take it with a grain of salt. Mormons say that Mormons really have like a Greek mythology understanding of God. He's like an exalted man. That like Zeus is this bearded guy. Father Barron, Bishop Barron now is really good about saying that the atheists who are like, I don't believe about a guy in the sky with a beard, like neither do Catholics. Right? St. Thomas Aquinas, God is the uncaused being. I am who am. Exodus 3:14. He's the non-contingent first cause. He can't be quantified under infinite, eternal, outside of time and space. That's why the piercing action of incarnation, God becoming man in Jesus Christ, is so amazing because it allows us to have a bridge to God. But the Mormons have more of like the Greek myth. That's not an insult. Greek mythology. So I'm saying like they understand God the way Greeks would understand Zeus and the Romans Venus and the kind of pantheons of God.
Well, I was reading along the Mormon scripture for apologetics reference purposes earlier in the year, and actually in the Pearl of Great Price, there's a book of Abraham, which is how it was discovered is a whole controversy. I won't get into that, but it's just by and large copy and pasting from Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, but instead of saying God said, he replaces it and the God said, just over and over, like and the God said, let there be light, and implying that, oh, this is God's angels who are creating the world. It's not God who's doing this in a direct way.
Yeah.
It's actually super gross. It is.
Tell me how you don't hold back. Tell me how you really feel.
I mean, it's super gross. Ultimately, Joseph, like when you dig in, his like a combination of weird Greek mythology and also the simplistic American Protestant theology. He thinks that God, he thinks that God's a bearded man in the sky, and worst of all, he puts God in the realm of the created. Ultimately, he says, God was this guy who went through this process, just like we're going.
It can't be turtles all the way down. In Hindu,
it's Hindu. It's you can attach all sorts of heresies and pagan ideas to Mormonism, and it's
right. No, that is, I'm serious. Like, we should be reminded of this as Catholics. That is the brilliance of Catholic theology. Is Aquinas' 5 proofs are just, they're very good. They still very much hold water today, because if you get to a certain point, you can't go into an infinite regress. Even Aristotle understood this. Okay, but what's the first cause? And even like Aristotle thought the world was eternal. And Aquinas, because he's so freaking epic and the sickest name ever, Dumb Ox. That is so cool. Like I mentioned before, like if I was a rapper, I'd be DJ Dumb Ox, because like it's kind of like you're just like ox, like thick yoke, thick neck, like and raps are gonna be sick. But it's like a total shout out to Aquinas. Anyone who's not familiar with the story of Aquinas and Dumb Ox, who's not know what I'm talking about? What do you know? Aquinas was in a class being taught by Albert the Great. Albert the Medium compared to Aquinas, to be honest. Albert the Great, amazing, epic intellectual figure as well in the church. Aquinas was so humble, he never put forward his personality. It's like Matthew 23:8-12. He exalts himself to be humble, those who humble themselves to be exalted. He lived that to the next. It's always dead silent in the back of the room. In fact, one time Aquinas this is like the guy who did the reaction to this, I want to punch this guy. You have to like fall to your knees, like, dude, what the, like, get a grip on yourself. But apparently, like, this guy in class once was like, hey, I want to tutor you. And Aquinas is like, okay. Like, he's like, dumb ox. Like, what sound does an ox make? Like, I don't know. Sounds like a machine. Like, what sound does an oxen make? I mean, you're a nurse. You're close enough to veterinary medicine. What is an oxen? How does an oxen?
It's the fox.
Well, okay, that's a song. Yeah, I know. That's that song. Yeah, it's a song. No, that doesn't count. That's fail. It's a hilarious joke. That's epic fail, though. I have not heard that song. What does the fox say for so long? That's brilliant. So this guy says to Aquinas in class, like, I want to tutor you. Aquinas is like, okay. And so he's tutoring him, and the guy makes a mistake, and Aquinas corrects him. And the guy falls to his knees and begs to be tutored by Aquinas. Why would he fall to his knees? Can you just be like, can you tutor me? What the fuck, dude? Like, seriously, talk about overreaction. Oh, please tutor me. It's like, I was Aquinas, I just like punch that guy. Like, no, that's disgusting. Imagine if Scott Hahn came here. You're like, oh, it's Scott Hahn, Dr. Hahn. Oh, how can I rub your feet or something like that? Like, get a grip on yourself. You know, if a Biden came, that actually was Biden. I'm not gonna lie. I really pray for President Joe Biden to live what he claims to be. I really pray he becomes devout Catholic, that he defends life, all being serious. I do like him in a weird way. I like his bumbling kind of like nature. I really do. Like, I like him on a personal level. I agree. I wish that he'd stop saying he's devout Catholic and supporting all these things that are obviously not Catholic. 100%. Period. I am not one of those like, oh, well, you know, when you look at it, like I pray every day that he becomes devout Catholic. I do like his personality. It's hilarious. Come on, man. Like, I do like that. Or when he's like in the middle of something like, what was I saying? Yeah. I'm like, God willing. I actually think, I hope he doesn't, I hope he doesn't have Alzheimer's or dementia. Because it's like, I heard a person made a point like, you should never, obviously, you should never make fun of anyone for any kind of disease. I mean, that's simple. But what I mean is like, we're all going to be there. We're all going to be in our 80s and have the problem. But what I'm saying is like, I actually don't think that he's always been bumbling. As an old videos when he's 40 me, he's like, you know, whatever. So it's like, I think he used to use quirks, which are great, which is awesome. In class, you heard the tutor story. In class, Aquinas would never say anything, and people made fun of him, like he's the dumb ox. That was their version of like the thing. Today it'll be much more vulgar or something. Twitter put down. Aquinas never spoke. And Albert the Great prophesied. He's like, you call him the dumb ox, one day his bellows will fill the entire world. So I guess ox's bellow, whatever that sounds like. Can I tutor you? Bah. Bah.
All right, so I've got a report.
You know what? No one cares. So just say it.
That's from Pope Leo XIII.
Go ahead.
So it says his encyclical to bishops and archbishops of the United States. Lunging Qua. I was trying to answer some questions from last class, but this is about the best I got. And maybe this, but he actually talks about the correspondence between Washington and Carroll, Bishop Carroll, which is kind of interesting. Nor perchance did the fact that which we now recall take place without some design of divine providence. Precisely at the epoch when the American colonies, having, with Catholic aid, achieved liberty and independence, coalesced into a constitutional republic, the ecclesiastical hierarchy was happily established amongst you. And at the very time when the popular suffrage placed the great Washington at the helm of the republic, the first bishop was set by apostolic authority over the American church. The well-known friendship and familiar intercourse that subsisted between these two men seems to be an evidence that the United States ought to be conjoined in concord and amity with the Catholic Church, and not without cause, for without morality the state cannot endure. The truth which that illustrious citizen of yours, whom we have just mentioned, with a keenness of insight worthy of his genius and statesmanship, received and proclaimed. But the best and strong support of morality is religion, and then so on and so forth. It was like, so I know that's a digression, but this encyclical by Pope Leo is really interesting because he goes into a lot of there's some really great lines in here, like for when America was, all the Americas, as yet but a newborn babe, uttering in its cradle its first feeble cries, the church took it to her bosom in motherly embrace.
And that's epic. It's well said. Wow. Leo XIII is awesome. I'm going to do a whole class on Leo XIII. I mean, like not a course. Well, of course, the syllabus. Olivia, the syllabus should be online. Okay. If you need it, just email me. You have my email obviously now, so I can send it to you, and you can see what, especially if like, you're an active nurse now, correct? Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you're called on duty or you have whatever, like you can't make it to class, or you can even schedule certain stuff according to your pleasure. You can see what we're going to be discussing. Like, all this topic doesn't sound interesting, I don't want to come, or I really want to come to that whole list is there. We'll do that later on in the semester. Talk about Leo XIII. We're done. I got to go back to Pullman pretty soon.
I have a tiny correction. You may want to double check. I think
I don't know if my ego can.
I believe you said he converted.
God, you're right. You're absolutely right. He's a cradle Catholic. You're right. Sorry. Thank you.
Well, I think it's important to.
That's it, that,
Truthful and accurate.
Yeah.
correct, you know,
considering how much disinformation you do, Grafton, in this.
yeah.
Let's not actually have real misinformation. No, thank you. You're exactly right. I read this book probably 10 years ago. And no, sincerely, thank you. You're exactly right. I remember the opening page. He describes his mother in a very beautiful way. In his devout Catholicism, he's like, he describes her as like a wildflower growing amongst some like sagebrush. He's not insulting the Mormons. He's kind of saying like, this flower should not have popped up in this place, but that was his mother. She's the one that took the family into Catholicism. He's a cradle Catholic. But he speaks with a lot of authority on Mormonism coming from Mormon stock, so to speak. You know,
Still up for all.
but you are,
family
yeah,
things and-
yeah. I think, yeah, exactly. Thank you for that correction. You're 100% right. Guys, I just like, yeah, I just want to like just chill here. It's not, I gotta go teach a class at WC at 2:10. I gotta head back, but I could just do this all day. I don't know. Does anyone have any other questions, anything whatsoever? My voice is getting very like, what's the word?
Can I tell you a Bill Taylor
Yeah.
story? Is it okay with you? They've heard it 200 times. But he told us this one time that he was up in Sandpoint as a parish pastor. And morning mass, in this particular morning, only one person showed up for mass. Well, that's fine, we're still gonna do mass, of course. And he did a homily and, you know, a little bit. After mass, he asked the parishioner, who was a rancher, farmer kind of guy, hey, what are you doing? You want to go out to breakfast? Sure, I'll do it. So they went out to breakfast. And as they're chatting along, he asked the parishioner, so what'd you think of the sermon? Kind of puts you on the spot, right? And the farmer rancher, as I call him, he says, well, Father, I'll tell you. He says, you know, I'm a rancher. And every morning I go out and feed the cattle or whatever he's got, you know, and he said, you know, most days they all show up and I feed them, of course. Some days, oddly, only one shows up. And I still feed them, but I don't dump the whole load. So that's my thought.
So, Father, in terms of giving 30-hour sermons,
Yeah.
Why the others didn't show up?
Yeah, maybe. But he was, I mean, obviously, he's a great man and self-effacing humor, and I mean, he's a humble guy.
Yeah.
Great guy.
no, he's exactly. He's famous for, and actually, I sincerely mean this. This isn't a joke. Like, he's famous for like doing in his homily or before mass, you talk about what the readings are going to be about.
Mhm.
He's the nicest man. He's like gentleness and sweetness personified. He'd be like, today in today's lecture, today's reading, you know, is from Isaiah, and Isaiah was this kind of guy, and like whatever. Yeah, he's a very kind of pastoral approach. The farmer, before answering, should have been like, if he's like, you know, what do you think of the sermon? Should have been like, well, who's picking up the tab? I just want to, you're paying for it. It was great. It was awesome.
He's also, in my view, his sermons and such. You read the gospel and all the parables. He's like a modern day parabolist, if that's a German. And he would draw from his